Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Emerging Economics. So, we shall continue our discussion on the ISLM model. Okay, like I mentioned in the previous class. So, it's everything that we do in the ISLM model is in the short run. Okay, the analysis of the ISLM model is in the short run. Okay, so in the previous class, we talked about how we derive the IS curve. We talked about the components of the aggregate expenditure function, the uniqueness of them, the things we change in order to suit the discussion of the ISLM. And what else did we talk about? Talk about other interesting things in that particular class. Yeah, talk about outputs, how it affects investment, how it increases income and all of that. Okay, so this is going to be the second class on the IS curve alone. So here I want to talk about the shifts of the IS curve. So what are those things that shift the IS curve? Remember that in the previous class I was saying that changes in interest rates causes a movement along the IS curve. So interest rate doesn't shift the IS curve. Now whatever is going to shift the IS curve has to be something that is outside that particular IS graph. Okay, so now before some people get lost, so we have this IS relation. So y equals c into brackets. This is consumption. Consumption is a function of disposable income y minus t. Okay, so y is equal to, and this is like the consumption function, and being a function of y minus t plus investment. Investment is a function of interest rate and output, national output, where the relation between this is this my blue marker? I think it is. So the relation between investment and interest rate is minus, investment and output is plus. It could be called sales. And okay, I didn't mention something in the other class. Be assumed here that everything that is produced is sold as the equilibrium position, of course. So there is no inventory. There is no stock of inventory. Now, what is inventory? So somebody might be wondering, what is inventory? So inventory is just a stock of raw material, processed goods, or maybe semi-processed goods that's couldn't be that couldn't be made into final goods in a particular year, as well as final goods that were produced in a year but were not sold. Alright, so all of those things contribute to the inventory of a firm. Now that we are talking about the entire economy, so all of those things contribute to the inventory of all the firms, okay, in the domestic economy. Now, plus G, government spending. So far, so good. Government spending has been exogenous in our model. That is, it is not determined by factors within the model. Alright, so we had something like this in the previous class to remind us of how we derive the IS curve. So here, we have the aggregate. It started from here. If you were in the previous class, you understand what I'm saying. Started from here. So there was an increase in interest rate. There was an increase. So it was here. Then the interest rate was at this point. There was an increase in interest rates, and that took us to interest rate reduces investment, and all of those things happen through the multiplier effect. The multiplier is really a good guy. Alright, it's really a good guy. But then the size of the multiplier depends on whether your economy is open or closed. It depends on the kind of tax that the economy is talking about. So in a closed economy, the multiplier depends on the marginal propensity to consume, the B depends on the income tax, the T, and in an open economy, it then depends on B, that is the MPC, depends on T, the income tax, then it depends on M, the marginal propensity to import. Alright, so those were the things that we spoke about, when we're talking about the multiplier. So all you just have to do is to check the playlist of the goods market. So before you get to ISLM, just go through those aggregate expenditure videos. So you're going to understand all of this that I'm saying. So there's a class dedicated to multiplier. Yeah, there's a class dedicated to multiplier. One or two classes dedicated to multiplier. It will be easy for you to understand. So interest rate made us to move from AE1 to AE2 because it reduced investments, reduced consumption later on, and all of that. So that lowered Y from Y1 to Y2. Remember that interest rate has increased, right? So we have the higher interest rates here and this. This is basically going to be understood by those that attended the previous class. So I will try to leave the link to that class alone as well in the description of this particular one. Then the link to the entire playlist of the goods market that you have to see to understand the IS curve properly. Okay, so then we have factors besides. What are the factors that are going to shift the IS curve? So factors besides I and Y, because you use sketching the IS curve, we have I on this axis and Y on this axis. So whatever is going to shift the curve is not going to be what is on its vertical or horizontal axis. No, it has to be something different. Alright. So factors besides I and Y in the IS relation. This is the IS relation. This is what the IS relation. IS relation will shift the IS curve as long as those factors affect the components of AE. Okay, so what are the components of AE? The components of equilibrium output, they are C, I, and G. Okay, we made net export to equal 0 because so we'll be able to simplify our analysis at first. So what are the other factors? This is why this is I. So tax is going to shift the curve. Alright, tax will shift the curve. This is I, this is Y, nothing happens. Then G will shift the curve because G is not here. G will shift the curve. And something like consumer confidence. Yeah, consumer confidence will shift this curve because consumer confidence will affect consumption. Alright, so if something happens and consumers really feel elated, they really feel happy that okay, something good is happening, something great is coming, that affects their consumption. It takes the consumption up, then it affects aggregate demand that way, or aggregate expenditure. It affects investment that way through increase in output, and increase in investment and all of that. Anyway, that's that about that. So in this particular class, I want to talk about two effects. Okay, two things that can shift the IS curve. So here we have effect of a fall in taxes. Now, when there is a fall in taxes, what does that mean? That simply means that the government is, using an expansionary fiscal policy. An expansionary fiscal policy through, and that can happen through the reduction in taxes, increase in government spending, or both. Alright, so we have that, and we also have effect of a rise in G, effect of a rise in government spending. Well, it's still about the government. So a rise in government will put more money into circulation, multiplies it because he's a good guy. And all that happens, so that is also called an expansionary fiscal policy. Alright, if that's were to be increased, that would be a contractionary fiscal policy, and the government spending were to be reduced as well. The same thing. Alright, but here we're talking about, you don't understand expansionary, you don't understand fiscal monetary policies. Okay, don't worry, we have a class. No, I promise you, it's just a class devoted to that. So just check our videos, go to what are contractionary and expansionary fiscal monetary policies. That is the title of the video, and have a nice time. Okay, have a nice time. Alright, so effect of a fall in taxes. So what is that going to cause? Now, you just have to go back to the IS relation. Where do you have T? So we have T in here. We have T in here. So which means we have T in the when we are talking about consumption. Consumption is what is dependent on disposable income. So we have T. So T is going to affect consumption directly. Alright. So effect of a fall in taxes. A fall in taxes means a higher disposable income. It puts more money in the pocket of consumers. Okay. And if there's more money in the pocket of consumers, they are likely going to increase their aggregate demand or the aggregate expenditure. We are talking about the entire economy now. So they are likely to increase their demand for goods and services. So let me just put it that way. And if that is going to happen, of course, what will that lead to? That is going to lead to an increase in the aggregate expenditure. Why? Because aggregate expenditure is this. Aggregate expenditure, I hope this place contains it. C plus I plus G, right? So this would rise, AE would rise, because C is rising. Okay, plus I plus G, of course. So that's what is happening. Now, an increase in consumption would, when consumers demand for more produce, that is why national output is going to rise. That would make firms to also respond. I said that there is no inventory. Okay, so firms have to create new goods now. So that means firms would have to invest, in meeting the rising demand of consumers. And note this: consumers don't increase their consumption by the same amount that their disposable income has risen. So that is also what we talked about that in MPC. Yeah, in MPC, when you're talking marginal pay to consume, why it cannot be 0 and why it isn't 1. So consumers would only increase consumption, at a rate that is lower than the rate at which the disposable income rises or changes. Okay, so ordinarily, alright, they don't spend every increase and they don't spend none of their increase usually. So they spend something between none and all. Alright, okay. So that happens, then investments would also rise. So there's going to be a double rise in this guy, double rise in AE, now simply because C is rising, I is rising, and G is still the same other things being equal. So all of this thing continues and continues and continues like that until the AE line finally gets to a point where it stops, depending on the size of the multiplier. If the multiplier were low, the effect on AE is going to be low. It's not going to rise as much. And if your multiplier were to be really high, significant, oh cool. So the A is going to be, the multiplying effect in the economy is going to be very, very high. All right, so like I said, just click on the playlist section of the video, or if I'm able to put the link in the description of this particular video, click on it, then see the video on the multiplier. You are going to, you are going to love it. I promise you, you're going to love it. All right, so this guy AE then increases, so it increases. So we bring in, let me use a different color. So we have something like this. The slope doesn't change. All right, so we have Z2. So this guy, so this was the old equilibrium, and now this is the new equilibrium. So there was an increase from A to B. Now we have this new Y, this Y2, this guy increased here, and then we have Y2 here. Remember that what caused all of these changes to occur was a change in taxes. It wasn't a change in interest rate, so that means interest rate is still the same. So we just bring this guy here. So this was point C, the initial point where I was intercepting Y, and this is point D, which is the new position. So what is that then? So that means this happens to be the first IS curve. So this is IS curve is not necessarily linear, it's not necessarily a straight line, it might be a curve, and then we have this guy now. So we have this guy now. Good. IS2. So, and a reduction in taxes is going to eventually lead to an outward shift of the IS curve. Yeah, an outward shift of the IS curve through all of these processes that we've explained. I hope you really have got that. So if you have any question concerning that, the comment section is for you. Just ask a question over there. And if you like the class, who doesn't like praise, who doesn't like to be praised or appreciated? So you might just appreciate us in the comment section as well. All right. So we have this second thing, effect of a rise in G, effect of a rise in. So we go back to the IS relation. So this is the IS relation. When G rises, of course, when G rises, G rises. All right. Sorry. So we have AE. Yeah, we have AE equals C plus I plus G. So AE would initially rise because G rose. AE equals C plus I plus G. Now the increase in G is going to put money into the pocket of everybody. So it puts money into the pocket of consumers. So AE would rise twice now because these people now have money. Individuals have more money plus I plus there's an increase in G. When individuals have more money, AE would rise 3 times now because C has risen. It will make people to demand for more goods and services, so which will necessitate more investments, and then you have all of this. So that continues on and on and on. So you see why it is good for the government to put money into the economy when there is a recession. So if the multiplier effect is significantly high, the economy will jump out of recession in a few months. All right. So all of this happens, and at the end of the day, it takes this. So AE curve is increasing basically. So it goes to a new position. So here we are assuming that our so this is AE2, don't mind it. So that's AE2. That was too high, but no problem. So we have this Z2, which is talking about the autonomous expenditure. So now we have, let me just call this E. Now this is not a continuation of what is here. Alright, and let me call this point F. So we have this, this was Y1. So there was an increase from E to F. Okay, then this is also rising. So we have this new guy here, Y2. So Y2 is rising. Now we trace Y2 downwards, and so we have a Y2, which is an increase. Now what caused all of this to happen? It wasn't a change in interest rate, it was a change in G. So alright, so that just means that at the same interest rate, we now have this new position. So we have EF, so I can just call this GH. Good. So at this point, we have this, don't mind the graph. So IS1, IS1. Alright, and then the curve shifted from IS1 to, okay, so then we have IS2. Don't mind mine. I don't think I was that good at finance, sketching graphs. Okay, so IS2, IS2, good. So there's going to be an outward shift of the IS curve as well when the government decides to increase its government spending. So in other words, what all of this is trying to tell us that if there is an expansionary fiscal policy, the IS curve is going to shift outwards. So now it depends on the analysis. Now depends on, was it coming from an increase, a reduction in taxes, or was it coming from an increase in government spending, or was it coming from both? The government reduced taxes and as well as government spending at the same time. Alright, so that will determine what is eventually going to happen. But in all of that, the conclusion is that the IS curve is going to shift outwards. Yeah. So that is the end of this particular class. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Of course, you see a bell button after you've done that. Click the bell button as well. That is to create awareness when we release new videos on the channel that you really want to see. And it also helps us to increase our YouTube community. We check the number over there. It's 682. As at the time of recording this video, 682. We want to get thousands of students, millions of students. Of course, and we believe we can do it with your help. When you share with your friends, you tell your colleagues about us, and with everybody's help. So it's a collective effort. Thank you so much once again. See you in the next class when we shall be talking about derivation of the LM curve.